Hello, Mr. Delphine. I'm speaking to Wayne Delphine, and we have some questions to attain to concerning the Marin County courtroom dealing in child support, in which Mr. Delphine has been having a horrible, horrifying experience dealing with. And I'd like to ask him some questions concerning this matter. So how you doing, Mr. Delphine?
I'm good, Reggie. How are you?
I'm doing good. Is there anything that you would like to say, a quote, before we begin?
Yes, please. In the name of Allah, the most benevolent, the most merciful, I like to say that I don't give legal advice. I don't get paid for legal advice. This is for informational and educational purposes and inspirational purposes. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Delphine, thank you for that. Now, I know you, but could you tell me about yourself so the rest of the world can know a little bit about you?
My name is Wayne Delphine II. Was born and raised in San Francisco. I've been living in Marin County close to about 20 years in Mill Valley. I have a background in English and a master's degree in public health. I'm concerned with the environment, the community, social justice, networking, arts, sciences, research, law. I'm glad to be here with you today to express my thoughts and opinions.
Hey, thank you, sir, because we will all be interested in hearing your thoughts and opinions when it comes to dealing with the child support hearing out here in Marin County in which you're dealing with. So you have a son. I'd like to know, how old is your son and how is your son doing?
Our son is 6 years old. Our son is doing well, or the appearance to be. I haven't seen him since July, and I FaceTime with him, and he seems happy, but I don't think he's doing so well because of the current situation with the courts, and courts have stepped in, so I haven't been able to see him.
So when you say our son, I assume that your son is with his mother and her family and not with you at this moment.
Yes.
And now, due to the separation, this is all concerning the experience you're having with the Marin County child support hearings that you're going through.
Yes, the child support hearing, Marin County Department of Child Support Services, and the Marin County Family Court, and also the Marin County Probate Court.
So could you tell us, what is your experience with the Marin County Family Court?
I originally went to the Marin County Family Court in 2012 because of extenuating circumstances. The mother of our child had some mental breakdowns, and the Child Protective Services got involved, and I had to obtain custody of our child because the mother of our child was on a 5150 hold, and the Child Protective Services were actually telling me that they wanted to take our child away, so I needed to obtain some kind of custody. So the current situation with the Marin County Family Court is that I've been going through an ongoing family court case, and it just seems that the courts and their employees have been treating me less than an animal. And what I mean is that animals live in mansions in Marin, and some of the treatment they receive is better than humans. And the treatment that I've received in the Marin County Family Court has been subpar to animals due to my religious beliefs, that I'm an Orthodox Muslim, due to my ethnicity, that I'm African American or black with Japanese heritage, and my opinion and my experience has been that they have made that a focus to make the determining custody factors, and they have also, meaning they, and for the record, I have to switch the names up of the people to protect myself, but Judge Adams Apple is one of the main people in the family court that has a known history of fixing and rigging cases with her friend, her close intimate friend, Joanna Kleptomaniac. And together they fixed and rigged the case to where Mrs. Kleptomaniac has made $40,000 to $100,000 by slander and libel against me and creating an image of me being a domestic violence perpetrator when I have no history of that. And they've also made several child abuse allegations. I don't have any kind of criminal record, no police reports against me, but this has been the doing of Judge Adams Apple and Joanna Kleptomaniac, where they belong to a lawyers group called Marin County Women Lawyers Group. And instead of them being in the best interest of the child, they have been very biased and been partial towards each other and prejudiced against myself.
So I assume, Mr. Dalpine, that this Joanna Kleptomaniac is the child's mother's attorney.
Yes, sir.
And what ethnicity is the child's mother?
The mother of our child is Caucasian, and she, I believe, is half Polish, Irish, Scottish, and German.
Okay, so Caucasian.
Yes.
So do you think, because Marin is known to be a pretty much Caucasian county, do you think that the court system in Marin County child support court is more or less swaying in her way because of any kind of racially charged incidents? Or is it that, do you believe that they're being a little bit condescending towards you because of your Islamic religious beliefs?
I would like to agree with all, and I'll say there's gender discrimination, there's racial discrimination, there's religious discrimination. So for the gender discrimination, I would say it's all in the color of law, meaning that when you go into the court, it resembles a court and there's a judge, but it's color of law. So you would think it's a court and that the people do justice and they don't look at you in a strange way because of your ethnicity. But my experience has been is that Judge Adams Apple has been more in favor of women, and she's been prejudiced against me because of my racial and my religious background. The bias in the gender is that as a woman in the court, and in my experience from seeing with my own eyes, Judge Adams Apple conspired with the mother of our child and Joanna Kleptomaniac to give her all these benefits. So the purpose of this is they have to make it seem that it's convincing that I am a domestic violence perpetrator. And they put a restraining order on my record because I noticed that the two of them were colluding and coaching each other in the last quarter of 2016. And I filed a CCP 170.1 against Judge Adams because she was being partial and showing bias. So when I recused her under CCP California Code of Civil Procedure 170.1, Joanna Kleptomaniac and Judge Adams brought me in ex parte, meaning emergency, to attempt to put a restraining order on my record for domestic violence.
Now,
And
for us, excuse me 1 second, Mr. Daphne, could you clarify the meaning of a CCP 171 for the listeners and viewers, so we can understand what that exactly is?
okay, so it's a California code for courts. So California Code of Civil Procedure 170.1 is a way to strike judges for bias. So if you go to CCP 170.1, there will be reasons that you could disqualify or try to strike out a judge for being biased, or certain reasons like they have in financial interest in the case, or they have some kind of conflict of interest in a case, and this is a remedy for people to disqualify the judge. So I use the CCP 170.1, and they put a restraining order on my record. But the reason they put the restraining order on my record, to keep the custody with the mother of our child, and also to give her free housing. So what happens is they label someone as a domestic violence perpetrator, but it's really for funding. So if you have a domestic violence record or some kind of restraining order on your record, it's gonna stop you from getting custody. So the purpose in my situation was that it prevented me from having joint custody, because if you have that on your record, they're not going to want to give you joint custody. So they intentionally put this on my record as a way to label me as a so-called domestic violence perpetrator. And then it's a way for the child support agency to come in and get federal funding, which is a grant program, AB 1058. So the domestic violence restraining order in itself is unconstitutional, because you have a case, U.S. versus Morrison, a Supreme Court case, and it states that the VAWA, Violence Against Women Act, is unconstitutional because they're going against the U.S. Constitution, and they're putting these restraining orders on people while at the same time violating their constitutional, human, and civil rights.
Now, prior to this child support case that you're going through, did you have any criminal record whatsoever before this?
No.
Have you ever had any dealings with the law in a illegal capacity?
No.
So all this came about from the time of your child support case, with you trying to have custody with your child?
Yes, with the family court case, and then that became a child support case because Judge Adams Apple, was fixing and tampering with the custody. So they had to make it seem as if it was a natural flow. And while they were doing it, it was just a way for them to do excessive litigation. So what I'm saying is that what happened was they knew that they didn't want to do joint custody, which the Supreme Court says that both parents should be involved in a child's life. But what Judge Adams Apple did was she was looking out for an intimate friend, Joanna Kleptomaniac. So there was an instance in my case where our son was diagnosed with ADHD, and Judge Adams was, faulted me because I didn't want to give our son Ritalin, and I wanted to give him medical marijuana, CBD, because I read about Ritalin and I wasn't okay with giving him that. And our whole family was okay with that. The mother of our child did that, and her family and my family as well. But they used that against me, saying that I was giving it to him as recreation so that Judge Adams could give the custody away to the mother of our child. And it was a way for them to sweep her history of mental illness under the rug. And I explained to Judge Adams Apple that the doctor was okay with me giving it to him. 2 doctors said that it was okay for our son to have that, and it was much safer than Ritalin.
Yes, and now how old is your son?
He's 6 years old.
And what is the legal title for Joanna Kleptomaniac?
Joanna Kleptomaniac is the attorney for the mother of our child. But I don't know if she's still representing the mother of our child, because when we had our probate hearing, Joanna Kleptomaniac stated that the mother of our child doesn't want her to represent her anymore. But she did state that she was representing the mother of our child's parents pro bono. So I don't know what that is, but that's what she stated in the probate hearing.
And how long have your court custody battle been going on?
It's been going on since, say, about August 31st, September 1st of 2016.
And in 2016, Joanna Kleptomaniac was not pro bono for your child's mother at that time.
No.
And in a financial capacity, how much would you say it was estimated that, let's say, your child mother paid Joanna Kleptomaniac?
$40,000 to $100,000.
$40,000 to $100,000. Now, do she have any financial parties that's probably providing her with this money?
Her parents.
So her parents now, they stake an interest in all this.
Yes.
And her parents now, what is your, let's say, what do you think of them?
Well, my opinion is that they are trying to bring our son back to Massachusetts to live. So basically, they have painted me as a child abuse perpetrator and a domestic violence perpetrator, and they're using that as a substitute to try to throw me out of our son's life. And Judge Adams Apple and Joanna Klepty are a part of that conspiracy, meaning they're conspiring to do that.
So this is looking like a legalized kidnapping that's taking place.
Yes, also involving the Marin County District Attorney's Office, Salma Tabasco, which once again, from them placing a false domestic violence restraining order on my record, they made a false child abuse claim against me, and Salma Tabasco, District Attorney Inspector, presented me with a good cause order. So I asked her, does this have any authority? Is this signed by a judge? She said no. I said, is it stamped and sealed by a court? She said no. I said, well, this is a void court order under 28 U.S.C. 1691, that all seals and writs and processes of the court are to be signed and stamped by the clerk thereof, meaning the judge. So Salma Tabasco, DA Inspector for Marin County, used this fake court order, good cause order, to allow in this kidnapping of our son, since I'm a domestic violence perpetrator, that they kidnapped our son without a court order from a trial by jury or a warrant, but just this fake paper that says the District Attorney Office, Marin County District Attorney Office, good cause order, which is really a forgery of a court order because it's not signed, and it's really just a corporate fiction, meaning that this DA inspector is hiding behind a corporate fiction of the District Attorney's Office, which is a fictional corporation. So it doesn't have any legal force, but because it's the DA, one would believe that, but it's really color of law, meaning it resembles a court order, but it's a forged court order because it doesn't have any legal authority other than them saying they're the district attorney.
Well, I'm sure that me and the rest of America, all the viewers of this film, would like to know, if you was accused of child abuse, was you ever arrested and incarcerated, detained for these charges?
No, these were just allegations, and if one had a trial by jury, I would have the right to face my accuser. So I have the right to face my accuser, but Judge Adams Apple, Judge Simpson of the probate court and Commissioner Longstroke of the child support, he's a child support commissioner, have all denied me a trial by jury. So by these three individuals denying me a trial by jury, they're able to get away with a quasi-criminal, quasi-civil accusation of me being a perpetrator. So the reason they get away is because they suspend the Constitution. You have the 7th Amendment that where there's a controversy of $20, it is your inviolate right granted by God that you have a trial by jury. And they're denying me that. They're continuously denying me of my constitutional, civil, and human rights for myself and our son.
So they just holding allegations that they perpetrated against you, that they made up against you, and they trying to use that as the reason. But at the same time, you have never been incarcerated, never been arrested, not even legally charged with these abuse charges, but they're trying to hold the allegations alone against you, and it's working in the favor of your child's mother.
Yes, I don't have any history of that, no convictions, nothing. What's going on is that they've made these allegations and accusations, but once again, without a trial by jury, you can't cross-examine these people. The doctor that alleged that I did child abuse, Sandra H. Hirschenbaum from Marin County Youth and Family Services, said that I was abusing our child. But when I talked with her in person, she said she never made those allegations and they weren't substantiated and that these were false allegations. But when I asked Sandra Hirschenbaum of the Marin County Family Youth and Services to write an affidavit to clear my name, she said she couldn't do it. So she admitted that the claims were false, and it's illegal for caseworkers and people of that nature to make false claims. But once again, without a jury trial, I'm being denied my right to a jury trial, and I can't get the due process that I should get. I also want to state that they have a hearing, an evidentiary hearing, but what happened was, from what I was saying before, when Judge Adams Apple held me at fault for the medical marijuana treatment, even though I had to put the permission of the doctors, she said you could have an evidentiary hearing where you could subpoena the doctor and the medical records. So I subpoenaed this doctor, Dr. G, from Marin Community Clinics, and what happened was Judge Adams told the doctor he didn't have to show up. Judge Adams Apple told the doctor he didn't have to show up to the procedure, to the evidentiary hearing. And he sent the records to Judge Adams Apple, even though I was supposed to see the records. So Judge Adams Apple obstructed justice because the whole purpose of the evidentiary hearing was to show that I didn't use the marijuana in a way that the mother of our child and her attorney, Joanna Kleptomaniac, perceived it to be. So what happened was, the evidentiary hearing, Judge Adams colluded with Joanna Kleptomaniac, and they suppressed the evidence that would have showed that I didn't act in a manner of giving our child medical marijuana recreationally. So the reason that I bring that up is the jury trial, or trial by jury, under the 7th Amendment in California Constitution. The jury would see that, and they would see that there's a lot of criminal prosecutorial misconduct and many biases and felonies being committed by Judge Adams Apple in the Marin County Family Court.
Do this Marin Family Court and this Judge Adams Apple have any history of wrongdoing in these court procedures with the Marin Family Court system?
I'm glad that you asked that, sir. Judge Adams Apple has been fixing and rigging cases since the 90s. there's an article in the Marin County IJ, or the Marin IJ, which is the independent journal. The late Paul Camera, he was a family law attorney to the best of my recollection, and he spoke of Judge Adams Apple fixing and rigging cases before she was a judge with a guy named Judge Michael Duffel. And what happened with that was there was another instance of a attorney by the name of Barbara Coach, and she spoke of witness tampering and evidence tampering with Judge Adams Apple in the Marin County Family Court, and also what I've experienced firsthand with my own eyes of them doing these kind of illegal acts and felonies being committed in their court.
And this information is public knowledge, and it can be attainable to anyone that want to research this matter.
The knowledge of Judge Adams Apple fixing and rigging these cases have been published by the Marin IJ, so in a sense they are public. Most people know about Judge Adams Apple and fixing and rigging the cases. However, a lot of people are feeding their families from the child support and the family law. So even though they know, they acquiesce, meaning they know that Judge Adams Apple are committing fraud, but they're attorneys in this avenue and they're feeding their families. The child support is a friend of the court, which is a violation of the Constitution and the separation of the powers doctrine, where you have three branches of government: judicial, executive, and legislative, where they're all separate but they're equal. But you have the child support where they have a so-called court, but the child support is in the executive branch of government. They don't have their own court, but they're colluding with the judicial branch because this child support money under AB 1058, Child Support Commissioner and Family Law Facilitator Program, that this money is paid into the state treasury that pays the judges' salaries and the state employees, which is a conflict interest. So back to what I was saying is that it's all related.
Okay, so now I know that the names has been changed to protect the guilty, so that this can don't proceed in any wrong way. But I like to also know, this Judge Adams Apple, she shouldn't be the higher court. Now there's an appellate court. Have you went through those procedures?
Yes, I have petitioned the appellate court on the errors that were committed by Judge Adams Apple and Joanna Kleptomaniac and Commissioner Longstroke. And what is going on is, I believe it's a judicial immunity that is being, where the appellate court is protecting the judges. So once again, this is color of law, meaning that one would think that the appellate court would correct the errors of law, but what's going on is they're protecting the judges, and it's a conspiracy almost, because what's going on is the child support agency pays money to the state treasury, and they receive federal funding from the federal government that pays all their salaries. So if you really think about it, none of these judges and commissioners should be hearing these cases, because there's a conflict of interest as far as with money, or what you say pecuniary interest, where it's stated in the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Code of Federal Regulations, that judges are not supposed to hear cases where there's a money interest. So the child support is paying these people salaries, and they're going to be in favor of that because that's how they're feeding their family. And this is where the corruption and the bias come in. The Child Support Commissioner, under Government Code 1099, that it states that no official should hold two public offices. So you have Commissioner Longstroke, where he says that he's a judge, a temporary judge. He says he's a child support commissioner. He says he's a judicial officer. And then he also says that he's a commissioner. This man is saying he holds 4 positions. But under Government Code 1099, and just everyone knows you can't hold 2 offices in different branches. So this is already a fraud. That this man is saying he's a judge, a commissioner, a judicial officer. He can't be a judicial officer and be a child support commissioner. He can't work in the judicial branch and work in the executive branch. But this is all a fraud. And when I've done the research into it, I've seen that this is a scam, because you go into the court and you think that this is a real court. But how is this a legitimate court if the money is paying this man's salary, which violates all the codes of civil procedure in federal and state level? So this is why I say color of law, because it appears to be a court. You see a man with a robe, you think he's a judge. And he's not a judge. He's an actor or an imposter. And I've asked for legal documentation for them to clarify the evidence, to show an oath of office, to show documents that validate and verify that he says who he is. And all that I've met is them threatening to arrest me. So when I ask these people for clarification of the evidence, they have made threats to assault and arrest me. So that shows this is some kind of fraud, because these are supposed to be people with a fiduciary duty, meaning they're entrusted people. They've taken an oath to uphold the Constitution, but what they're doing is they're lying and deceiving the people under the color of law that they are a judge or they are a lawyer, but they're really doing underhanded work. But one wouldn't see that unless they studied that and understood what I was saying.
So when you clearly ask them to prove their who they are, they call on the bailiff to have you removed from the courtroom?
Yes, that's happened several times. Judge Adams Apple, she actually did that in a hearing yesterday. So what happened was, what's going on is that there's a long custody dispute, and I was waiting on a hearing for custody in Judge Adams Apple's court yesterday. And what happened was, about a year ago, Judge Adams Apple coached and colluded with Joanna Kleptomaniac and the parents of the mother of our child, and told them to get a conservatorship and a guardianship over our son. So she coached the other side on what to do to harm me and our son. So when I went to the hearing yesterday, Judge Adams Apple said, I don't have the jurisdiction to to hear your case anymore, because it's in the probate court. So I asked Judge Adams Apple, I said, Your Honor, in all fairness of the law, wouldn't that be illegal if you coached, which is a misdemeanor under federal rules of civil procedure, that a judge is not supposed to practice law from the bench? How is this fair and valid if you told Joanna Kleptomaniac and the mother of our child's parents a year ago to get this guardianship and conservatorship as coaching? How is this valid? So her response to me was, Mr. Dauphine, you're out of line. And she ordered the bailiff to assault me and throw me out the court instead of answering my question. So this is the thing, is that I'm being met with this kind of resistance because these people with the fiduciary duty are not acting in a public capacity as a judge or a government employee, but rather in a private capacity, meaning they're acting for themselves. Because you see them wearing their clothes as a judge doesn't necessarily mean they're acting in that behalf, but rather committing felonies.
So this is not Judge Adams Apple first time coaching from the bench?
No, she's been doing this for 20, 30 years.
Whoa, that's terrible. And it seems like this is one-sided and you don't have too much of a chance. I'd like to ask you though, what's the current situation with your son's mother?
The mother of our child was hospitalized on a 5150 hold, and the parents gained conservatorship in Judge Simpson's probate court. And what happened was Judge Simpson didn't do her due diligence because the mother of our child, her mother is bipolar and has not sought treatment. They have a history of mental illness. The father of the mother of our child is drunken, has driven under the influence. There's been some incest going on in their family. And Judge Simpson just was in favor of them. She didn't do her due diligence. And when I brought this to her attention, it just went over her head. I also asked her for a trial by jury. She refused that. But what is strange is that in an article with the law reporter, she told the newspaper that that's her favorite part of the job, is the trial by jury that is impartial. But to me, she's saying she's refusing me a trial by jury. So what does that mean? I can't have one because I'm black, because I'm Muslim, because I'm Asian? But rather, this is some kind of bias because in her public capacity as a judge, she's telling the newspaper the trial by jury is impartial, which it is. But she's telling me I can't have one. So I had to recuse her under CCP 170.1 as well. And when she set an order to strike my motion, she did not sign that under a sworn affidavit. So I had to object to her motion or order striking my motion for the CCP on the fact that she wouldn't swear under penalty of perjury that what she's saying was true. So she basically made false statements because there's no way for me to confirm that what she's saying is true because she won't sign an affidavit under penalty of perjury. And this is hearsay evidence because she won't sign under oath. And there's also federal rules and civil rules of procedure codes on that, making sworn oaths under penalty of perjury that if you're lying, you could be held accountable. But rather, this judge, which has a fiduciary duty, Judge Simpson of the probate court, that has done over 60 trials by jury, maybe more than that because that was many years ago, she will not sign a sworn affidavit. So it has to be false.
And she's overlooking the fact that your son's mother, 5150, as at the present time, your son's grandmother, the mother's mother, is bipolar, and the mother's father, your son's grandfather, has DUI, driving under the influence. And all this is being overlooked, and she think that the grandparents has your son's best interest at heart, and she's swaying in their favor over yours.
Well, yes, sir. Once again, there is bias, and it's a conspiracy of civil rights. And what's going on is Judge Adams is colluding with this probate judge, and without a trial by jury, my due process has been violated. I haven't been treated fairly in this court, and it's been subpar to a level below an animal.
And this is probably the $10,000 question. I'm sure a lot of the viewers is wondering, is there any way that you could have got all this transferred to another courtroom up under another judge proceedings?
There's always a possibility, sir. But what's going on is that the Marin County Superior Court is exceeding their jurisdiction and making these void judgments, because when you violate due process and you go against what the law says, they keep generating these void orders. For example, the Child Support Commissioner, his orders are void under Latin term coram non judice, void ab initio. Coram non judice, that means that this man has no authority because he's not a judge. Void ab initio is a Latin term that is void from the start. So the family court judge and the probate judge and the child support commissioner are all generating void orders and judgments because it goes against one's due process. The reason why people don't speak out against it, because they're all eating from that pot. The attorneys involved in this matter are not going to speak out against your constitutional rights because they're making money from the litigation. When it goes to child support, the state is making federal incentive bonuses. So when you give them $1, they get matched from funds by 66%. So when you go to the appellate court to answer your question, it's still a conflict of interest because this money is going to the state treasury and it pays those judges' salaries. So why would they say something? You would think that they would say something if they were fair and they were impartial and without bias. But with all these billions of dollars, these counties and these cities are funding their budgets. People are eating off this money, which is really a grant program. They don't know, they think it's a courting because they see a guy in a robe that he's a judge. But it's just a really sophisticated way to steal people's money where you're coerced into paying these people. And what happened in my situation was I went down to speak to Leon Tame. And what happened was, and a lady by the name of Cynthia. And I went to the child support office and I kept talking with them. And they were telling me it was mandatory that I had to fill out all this paperwork. But when I spoke to Leon Tame, he told me that it was voluntary. So when I found that out, I said, these people are using fraud. And they're using your own information to self-incriminate you, which also goes against the U.S. Constitution. So the child support people are stealing people's money without a warrant, without a court order from a jury trial, without a writ of execution, without a notice of levy, without a writ of garnishment, and without all these propers of procedural due process that one has. But since they have this special friend relationship with the court, they get away with this. And you're not going to hear this from the employees because they make this moniker that it's in the best interest of the child. But what's going on is there was a U.S. Supreme Court case, Blessing versus Freestone, Blessing versus Supra, in I believe 1997 or 1999, where there is these women from Arizona. They sued the child support agency because they weren't getting their benefits. But why this case is pivotal is because the Supreme Court stated that child support is not a federal right. It was never intended to benefit custodial parents or their children, but it is a way for the states to make money. So if you look under AB 1058, the Child Support Commissioner and Family Law Facilitator Program, this is how they get paid, and the states make money from this. When I asked Michelle Mayonnaise, the DCSS attorney in Marin, she lied on the interrogatories because I sent them interrogatories, which is another fancy name for questions. This attorney, Michelle Mayonnaise, lied under penalty of perjury about the child support program. So what's going on is that they're using the color of law, color of authority, and color of office to defraud me out of my money and kidnap our son. So when you go to the upper courts, they're in favor of the lower court's decision. They won't tell you the reason why they deny it. But what happened was I objected to them denying it because my rights are being trespassed upon, my constitutional rights. They sent my paperwork back. And as stated by some of my family members, had that would have been the president, they wouldn't have sent that back to him. Had that would have been anyone else, they would not send the paperwork back. So that shows that they don't want to do what they're supposed to do. The Marin County Superior Court is exceeding their jurisdiction. The appellate court or the appeals court has the jurisdiction, but they won't implement the jurisdiction to correct the illegal errors and the misconduct of these individuals that I've spoken of in the Marin County Superior Court, the Marin Probate Court, the Marin Family Court, and the color of law Marin County Child Support Court.
And I like to state for the record that we're in the state of California, and some states probably vary differently by law. But we're in California, and we're talking about Marin County in California. And I'd like to know, Mr. Dalpine, have this court system ever presented you with any false documents? Any documents that was not legally binding? Any documents that wasn't with a proper seal or proper signatures or anything of that meaning?
Yes. The Child Support Commissioner, Commissioner Longstroke, he used this child support order or recommendation, but as stated, is void ab initio coram non judice, meaning that it has no legal force to it. And from this void judgment, the child support agency sent me an income withholding order. But this is a forgery of a real income withholding order from a court. So what's going on is, since they're connected with the court, they could get away with these acts. I notified the San Rafael police about the forgeries of these papers. They stated that they don't want to get involved because they rely on the information of the district's attorney's office. I spoke to the Novato Police Department. I called them from the child support office, and I told them these people are stealing my money without a warrant, without a court order from a jury trial, without a proof of an undertaking, without a writ of execution, without a notice of levy, without a writ of garnishment. I showed them these fake papers and forgeries of court orders and papers and documents that they've used markers. Michelle Mayonnaise, she marked out the papers with markers, and these are supposed to be papers from the court, and they're using markers like a kid does, and they're crossing stuff out, voiding already voidable. The documents are already void, but when they use markers on a legal document, that voids it itself, because the original parties would have to agree to the alterations. So they're altering already fraudulent documents. The documents of Judge Simpson and Judge Adams are also void because they have went against the due process and they have exceeded their jurisdiction. They're warring with the Constitution, and they can't protect someone's constitutional rights at the same time. So if Judge Adams or Adams Apple is collecting money under color of law to put in the state treasury, that's not what a judge is supposed to do. A judge is supposed to be impartial and without bias, not putting money into the state treasury for herself to receive bonuses. So what's going on is the papers are void. They are forgeries, but the appellate court are not going to set these void judgments aside because they're all eating off this money. They're all eating out the devil's pot. So they're not going to overturn that. And another thing is that the child support does not follow due process because they don't do a trial by jury. They claim that you owe money, but they can't prove that you owe the money. So when I asked them to prove it, and I asked for all the documents in the court pleadings, they threatened to have me arrested. And when they couldn't show the proof of that, they had the Marin County Sheriff assault me and throw me out the court, all because I asked them to clarify the evidence that I did in person and through the court pleading. So all of these paperwork and documents are void, and some of them are forgeries. The child support documents are forgeries of real court orders because the child support agency is in the executive branch of government. They don't do court orders, but they have a color of law court. And under the separation of powers doctrine, they can't have a court. So whatever they're creating is a forgery because that's not what they do. But since this is $1 billion industry, they get away with that. But if you fine tune and you look at their documents, you will see that they're fake or color of law. But they resemble a court order, but they're not.
And upon, let's say, further requests, upon anyone's interest, these documents, do you have any of these documents in your possession?
Yes, I do, sir. And when the time comes, you and we could talk about them. But I do have those in my possession.
And if the time was to come, and if someone was to say, well, could you teach me, could you point out, could you prove, could you anything with these documents, you will be able, upon further request, present these documents, show the legality of these documents to viewers in the future.
Yes, I would be more than willing to show people, because it's not right. And to answer your question, sir, I pointed out these documents, the child support order from Commissioner Longstroke, and I pointed out the alterations from Michelle Mayonnaise and Chris Honk. Chris Honk is a deputy clerk. He used whiteout on the document, and then he wrote his signature on that. That's also altering a document that's not supposed to be altered. So you think of it as a check. If I put whiteout on a check and I get that to the bank, that's going to raise a red alert. They're not going to accept nothing like that. If I put whiteout on mortgage papers for a bank, they're not going to accept that. If I alter any kind of legal documents that looks funny, they're not going to accept that, and the people are going to want to investigate that. So that's what's going on with the child support. There have forgeries of court orders. And I told the Nevada police that. I showed it to them on tape when I went to the child support office in Nevada. They said, we know that these papers are no good, but we're not going to do anything. And if you want to talk to our superiors, you can, and they're not going to do anything. So they admitted that they know that they're forgeries, but they're not going to do anything, because what's going on is that child support is like a franchise business. You got the child support federal office that has all these contracts within the states and the counties to have these child support offices to collect child support from people, or obligors, or whatever they call it. And they have contracts with the court. So who knows? They're probably just renting the court out, but you think it's a real court. They have contracts with the sheriff. They have contracts with the district's attorney's office. The state is not supposed to be doing business like that, but when they do business, they fall under the same laws as regular businesses, because they're operating a for-profit business. Child support is a for-profit business. They sell application fees, $25. They sell their services, but then they're masquerading, and they're trying to tell people that child support is in the best interest of the child. And just to state this roller coaster that I've been on has shown me that none of the parties that I've stated have been in the best interest of the child.
They don't even ask the child what do they think about being with this parent or that parent, or in this instance, the child is now being kidnapped and abducted to a whole nother state. Am I right?
Yes, this is the doing of Judge Adams Apple and Joanna Kleptomaniac, Commissioner Longstroke, Michelle Mayonnaise, Chris Honk, Salma Tabasco, the Marin County DA's office, Sandra Hersenberger from the Marin County Youth and Family Services. They're all acting in a legal manner because they're biased towards the mother of our child and prejudice against me. So they're using these ways of the legal system to kidnap our son, which I stated about Salma Tabasco with the good cause so-called court order. The domestic violence restraining order that Judge Adams Apple has placed upon me, and I don't have a history of that, but they did that intentionally because I informed the appellate court in the California Supreme Court that these individuals or the said parties are doing illegal misconduct. They're committing felonies in their court. So they are acting in a way, and they're kidnapping our son. Also, Judge Simpson of the Probate Court, where they're going to try to take our son away to the East Coast in Massachusetts. So that is true, under color of law, authority in office.
And this abduction is taking place while you're still going through the court system, am I right?
Yes, what happened was the Marin Family Services, or the Family Court Services, they do custody evaluations and determinations. And we had a court hearing in July. It got postponed, the Family Court Services, till August. And then it got postponed again because the mother of our child was in a hospital under a 5150 hold. And Judge Adams, a year ago, Judge Adams Apple, she told the mother of our child's parents and their attorney, Joanna Kleptomaniac, to get a conservatorship. So what happened was they did that to bypass the family court hearing that I had yesterday for custody determination. So as stated, what they're doing is illegal, and this is what they're doing in Marin County. They're doing illegal things in the court. Judge Adams Apple, they have treated me worse than an animal. They're acting in a manner of racketeering, like the RICO laws with the mafia. They're illegally stealing money from me without any of those documents that I stated. And these are what the judges are doing that have been appointed. They're using their oath that they swore to uphold the Constitution to monetize and make money off myself and our son. So they've slandered my name and used my name as a way to monetize and make money, because they also receive funding for all the restraining orders they put on individuals. And then that gives a so-called battered woman a way to go to these agencies to get free housing. And granted that there are real scenarios where people get abused. So by all means, I'm not trying to discredit that. But in my situation, it's all like racketeering, where they put the restraining order on. That gets funding from the state. They put someone on child support. That's all state funded. The attorney, Joanna Kleptomaniac, she's litigating for $40,000 to $100,000, and none of this is in the best interest of our child. So it's all for money. But you will never see the people speak on that, because they're all eating out of the devil's pot.
This is a highly unjust situation. It's something that's been taking place in the Marin County child support court system for many years now. No one seemed to address the issues because of the entities that they're dealing with. This is very, very much illegal what's taking place. But I believe it was in the dark to come to the light, and eventually this house of illegalities will come tumbling down. And I'd like to ask you one final question. This is a question because marijuana has been proven legal in California as of right now. So I'd like to ask you this question, Mr. Dalpine. What was the court error concerning marijuana in Ridland?
So as stated, we talked about it earlier, but what happened was Judge Adams Apple gave the custody to the mother of our child because she said I was giving marijuana to our son recreationally, which I wasn't. I was giving it to him under the permission of 2 doctors. But then she stated I could have an evidentiary hearing to clear this up and subpoena Dr. G, the child psychiatrist. So what happened was, when this evidentiary hearing came up, Judge Adams Apple told me without notice that she said the doctor didn't have to show up. And he sent the medical records, but I never got them, even though I had my attorney at the time subpoena the records. So instead of clearing my name and showing the proof that I didn't do it recreationally, Judge Adams Apple obstructed the justice and suppressed the evidence of the medical records, told the doctor he didn't have to show up after I waited months for this hearing, put a domestic violence restraining order on me, and just left it the way it is. So that's the obstruction in the court error, was that you have Judge Adams Apple being in charge of the court, of the evidentiary hearing, but suppressing the evidence and telling the doctor he doesn't have to show up. So they're sidestepping the due process, as I stated, that when they suspend the Constitution and they don't allow you a trial by jury, which is their inviolate right, yours and mine. And Judge Adams Apples keeps saying to blame the legislators. That's insufficient. She's a judge. She has an oath to the Constitution to uphold the Constitution. So they're constantly telling me false statements and tampering with evidence. Witness tampering is stated by Barbara Kaufman and Paul Camera and these other individuals that have spoken out about the corruption in the Marin County Court.
Well, thank you, sir. I just wanted to clarify for the viewers one more time how this judge is taking the law into her own hands, and she's coaching the opposing attorneys, is in helping them against the truth, and they're just falsifying all the evidence. And I would like to say to you, sir, thank you once again for sharing this with the public. And I will say, as the Christians would say, and may you go in peace. And I will say what they would say in Judaism, shalom. And in the words of Islam, assalamu alaikum. Peace be on to you, my good brother.
Thank you too. And let me say that I miss our son, and I miss the good times we had, and the nurturing and the bond that we shared. And it's stated in this interview that's what I have to learn, is that these said parties don't want me to provide this relationship that my father did with me and his father did with him, and all the fathers that are involved in their children's lives, but rather they want me to fight their corruption and their bigotry. So I just want to say I love my son. You know, I love my mother. I have love for the mother of our child, and thank you for allowing the time to interview me and hear me out to what I'm saying. And I'd like to shout out all the fathers out there and all the people, the families that are keeping it strong, and thank you very much.
Thank you for educating the public, and I'm sure they'll be hearing back from you again, as this is probably only part one, and we would like to hear the future outcome of what goes on next. Thank you, sir, and have a good day.
You too. Thank you.